All right, here we are. Common Sense, Ohio, March 29, 24. 3/29/24. Here we are. And it is Good Friday here at the studio, commonsenseohioshow.com. And those who want to check out commonsenseohioshow.com, guess what? You can just go to commonsenseohioshow.com. We were just talking about this. You know, our likes are up on Facebook. We're getting a lot of engagement on Facebook. I mean, things are happening. The show is spreading like wildfire, as we predicted it would. But you can check us out. We are brought to you, of course, every week. I guess week in and week out, we are brought to you by Harper Plus Accounting. I just had another call with Glenn Harper over there at Harper Plus, and you know we were not only talking about we were already talking about next year. So he's in the midst of of tax season.
Really?
And anybody who's got a small business has worked with anybody like a real accountant in tax season, like you don't get a hold of him. Like
No.
But he called me. We went through my numbers that because April 15th is right around the corner, and then he said, all right, so next year, or for this year, here's what we need to be doing. We made some adjustments to the payroll. We made some adjustments to the withholdings. And so, you know, already on it for next year. That's why he is my accountant and could be yours, Harper Plus Accounting. Yeah. You know, a lot of times, or for how many weeks now, we've been talking about World War II, but I'm going to shift gears. We got a lot of other stuff to talk about, but I wanted to maybe add something in because it is Good Friday. I mean, it's not like this day in history changed the entire Western civilization.
Or anything.
Except it did. Right? It did. But
right.
So I'm not shy about my Christianity or my belief in my faith in Christ. But I read this passage this morning, and it really I should have just read it without saying where it came from because it's sort of it fits across the board. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though for a good person, someone might possibly dare die. Now, the preceding passage, of course, is you see at just the right time when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. You know, and the point here is that it's so easy to say, I'm going to go take up a just cause or what I perceive to be a moral person. I'm going to stand for you or I'm going to stand for you and we'll go fight together. You know, and you see this nonsense. It's actually not nonsense. You see this playing out in the streets with people protesting with whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's in Christianity, there's this notion that Christ took up the cross for those who didn't deserve it, you know, for the ungodly, the unworthy, all of us, right? So we were all fall short in the eyes of God, and Christ takes up the cross for us. You know, so think about that. When you're on your righteous high horse, on your soapbox, even us here at this table arguing about it, like there was one in history, one man, son of man in history who said, I'm going to do it for everybody. I'm going to die for everybody. And all you have to do is just say, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's all you have to do.
Right.
All you have to do is say thank you. Yeah, we didn't earn it. We didn't deserve it. Nobody deserved it. But that's what he did. Now, you don't even have to believe, right? So take it away from my faith for a minute and just think about that. Stand up sometimes for people who don't deserve it.
Right.
Or you think are less than moral. And maybe by doing that, you're actually helping them find the path towards the morality. And that's sort of, that is my faith. That's sort of the tenet of it. It's like, not only do we, like you can just say, all right, we've all deserved salvation because of what Christ did, and we received the gift, and we have faith, and we believe. But then the step two is sort of, how do we at least show that we want to earn it? You know, like we follow in those footsteps. So by somebody doing that for us, it leads us down a more moral and righteous path. So think if we picked up the cross for somebody else, at least metaphorically speaking, who maybe isn't so worthy in our eyes or less than worthy in our eyes. And there's lots of scripture we can talk about, like judge not lest ye be judged, right? And, you know, it sort of it gives me a little bit of thought about what I do day in and day out representing folks in court. And, you know, I get this fundamental question every time I talk about, like, how do you represent those guilty people? And, you know, that piece of scripture I should identify. It's from Romans.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I just turned off instead of on.
The other thing, I'll interject this while Steve's searching. The other thing that Steve does that people, you know, some attorneys are way more generous than others. And I know Steve, I'm not trying to advertise you go in there and ask for free stuff. Steve does a lot of pro bono things to help people who don't have money, who need some legal advice. I just want to say that is one example of the way that Steve tries to live Christ's words. And I know that means a lot to you, Steve.
Well, it does. I appreciate that.
And I just want to say that because that your stock and trade is your time.
Yes.
Yes. And you're giving it pro bono, people, means for free.
It means for free. So when people call and say, hey, I just got this quick question, and it sort of started with this podcast and the radio show at 99.7 I used to do. It's like people call in, I sort of point them in the right direction. I can't always do the work for free, but I can often at least give people my attention for whatever period of time that takes. And anyway, that was from Romans 5, verses 6 through 10. Go check it out. It sort of moved me as I researched. I was gonna do a little history of Good Friday, and for those who don't know, this is the day, right?
Right.
This is the day. So and that sort of hit me out of Romans, and it was I think a good way to kick it off. So everybody maybe can learn a little bit from that. And I've always said this as I got into Christianity, and particularly reading the scriptures, both Old and New Testament. Find something bad in there. I dare you. I dare you to try. Find something that you can't. It's like a rule book for life. And it provides sort of the baseline, the fundamental baseline of what I perceive as morality and good behavior. And I also know intuitively I fail day in and day out
we all
to
do.
be perfect.
We all do.
So, it's like be weary of those who say they're always perfect and always consistent and always right. And that in some ways, that's what we do here. I think that's a good way to sort of segue this back to the show, is like we try to be right. We try to take on different viewpoints. We argue amongst ourselves at times. We argue amongst others who are commenting on our Facebook page or wherever at times. But the idea is to pursue the truth, at least in a commonsensical way. And, I'll kick it back to you, Norm. Sometimes when we get a fact wrong, we try to correct it. And I think that's what you were talking about doing today.
So I asked my friends here, my colleagues, if I could open the show with a correction. So I was talking about the unionized situation in Ohio, whether it's a private company or a public employee. And I used the phrase. And this phrase does not apply to Ohio, despite me using it. And I was incorrect to use it. I said that Ohio is a right-to-work state. Ohio is not a right-to-work state, but it is a hybrid of the concept of right-to-work. And the hybrid, the dispute involving the teacher, and now there's a case coming up from Kroger, the Kroger grocery company, same issue. Ohio law, this is why I got confused thinking it was right-to-work. Right-to-work means that you don't even have to be in the union if it's a union shop. In Ohio, you have to be in the union if it's a union shop. But the hybrid is that you can decline that portion of your dues that goes to political activity. That is a separate signature requirement in Ohio law. Kroger, just to give you some context, so Kroger in this litigation, the union and Kroger were deducting dues for political purposes, as well as the regular union dues for this particular employee that's suing. And it was on a single form. In other words, a single signature was given to this guy. You had to sign the form doing both things, both actions. I agree to deduct my union dues, and I agree to have the political PAC money taken out of my paycheck too. And he was not given a second form to just decline or approve the PAC money. And so the litigation is about that. So we're not a full right to work state, but we're some kind of hybrid in between no protection and right to work. We're in between. So I wanted to clarify that because I stepped in it by using right to work state.
That hybrid situation, that's kind of common sense.
It does make some sense,
doesn't it? I mean, at least you're allowed to opt out of things you don't agree with. Yes, if you're forced to be in a union, but you don't want to give to Planned Parenthood or a PAC because that's not your political party or
whatever it is, whatever your belief is.
And
exactly.
It's sort of like a micro example of what our government is not doing these days. They're taking our tax dollars and spending them for political purposes that people don't agree with. So if our government, for instance, is backing abortion clinics and you don't agree with abortion, your tax dollar, I don't have any control over that
at all.
And there is this is an interesting legal point. It's like it's also relevant to the most recent U.S. Supreme Court decision argument on Dobbs or on the abortion pill. Mm-hmm. It's like which does not turn on abortion pills at all. It turns on something called standing, which is what I'm talking about. So in order to bring a lawsuit, in order to challenge a law, in order to actually take up the cause of a law you want to declare unconstitutional, you have to have something called standing. In other words, I have to be aggrieved in some way, shape, or form. It has to impact me. I have to be a litigant. So I can't just go file a lawsuit because of something happened to Norm or Brett. It has to happen to me.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, there is no broad, generalized taxpayer standing. So if your tax dollars are going to something like funding abortion clinics, I don't get to file a lawsuit.
Yeah.
There's no general taxpayer standing.
They throw those out immediately.
They throw it out immediately.
Yeah.
And there's some exceptions where taxes are earmarked specifically. So we're gonna tax this and then give it to that.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes there's some exceptions,
like tobacco.
Like
maybe it could be. I guess an example. Maybe
like schools or you could pick something.
Okay.
But rarely does that happen.
Yeah.
Rarely does that happen.
It used to be we had this sovereign immunity that was complete, and now the states and the federal government have, in certain cases, actually passed legislation that says you can sue us for the following subjects.
Yes, so
like automobile accidents.
Yes, so what like those are legislative grants of standing. So there can be standing, but only because they say so. So
that's right.
And there is a court in most states. In Ohio, we call it the Court of Claims, where you can go sue the government. Now it sucks. They call it the litigants or the plaintiff lawyers who have to file against government entities in the Court of Claims. They usually call it the Court of No Claims because.
Yeah,
the damages are severely limited, and you can't do much. So good luck. It's a single judge who's working for the government that you're trying to sue. But anyway, that's a different discussion. But so the other point that's relevant to this is the difference between private unions and public unions. And there's it seems to me, and I don't know why most people don't talk about this more, but having a public union that gives money to, say, Joe Biden. And he's found himself crossways with the auto workers now, but he enjoyed.
Although
that
they
support.
endorsed him.
Oh, they endorsed him, and the teachers during COVID were pumping tons of money into the people's or the governmental politicians whose decision it was to shut down the schools and let the teachers go home.
Yeah,
so if you don't think that had an influence on what was going on, you're crazy. So public unions are a touchy subject for me. And it's, because now we're leveraging against the government what's going to happen? You get government bending to the will of the unions instead of independent operation on behalf of everybody who's not in the union.
Even heroes of the Democratic Party, like Franklin Roosevelt, were against classic Democrats. They were against unionization of government employees.
Yeah.
And
that's what I mean by public unions. Government employees.
Okay. And for obvious reasons, because as we've seen, as it's rolled out, since the 50s and 60s, where the growth in the labor movement has been in the public sector.
Sure,
it has not been in the private sector.
As we
have 4 or 5 Honda factories, for example. In Ohio, none of them are unionized. So the unions have been defeated in many private sector areas. Tesla, not unionized. It's BMW, Toyota plants, all these plants now where the UAW used to have a wraparound control of the auto industry. It's really only the legacy companies that they represent anymore.
Yeah,
because workers are able to, I think they don't vote for the unions because the safety measures, the old Upton Sinclair, where a guy falls into a meat grinder and they keep making the hot dogs, that stuff's not happening anymore as much. I mean, there was a guy in the steel plant that fell in the bucket, but otherwise it's pretty safe on the job now compared to 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And employees have rights against wrongful discharge.
Well, and
you don't need a union for that.
There are OSHA is out there.
Exactly.
There are other rules in place about children working and whatever.
Yeah.
So, but think about it. You've got a public sector union. So say the teachers, or say the air traffic controllers, or say whoever, whatever the union is.
Yeah.
Negotiating with the president to spend our dollars.
Yeah.
Right. Not his dollars.
Or county commissioners or state school boards.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
And we don't have a say-so. So like in the private sector, the unions are leveraging against the private owner of a company. So go have at it, man. Do what you want. Unionize and negotiate a fair rate. And if it's not fair, the company's going to say, no, I'll bring in somebody else, whatever it would be,
And then go on strike.
And
do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, whatever you would do. But in the public sector, it's a little bit different dynamic there.
Right.
Like whoever they're negotiating with, it's not their money, it's ours. And then they get to spend our money to advance their own political interest.
Yeah.
So when Biden is catering to the teachers' unions, he's doing it with our money. And he gets elected.
Right.
So like he has a counter incentive, maybe a separate incentive rather, to getting the best deal.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't care because he's not spending his own money; he's spending ours.
Yeah.
And as I always say on the show, it's really easy to spend other people's money.
The blueprint was set, by Ronald Reagan when the air traffic controllers walked out. He's like, well, we're not shutting down the airline industry. Like you're mad. And he just replaced. He fired him. He fired him and replaced him.
That was part of their contract, though. So they had a contract that I think that they weren't allowed to walk out no matter what. They couldn't strike and walk out. And when they did, Reagan fired them all.
Yeah, he said, "Well, you violated the contract.
Right.
You're gone."
Right.
So
man, look, having a president with that had the mettle to do stuff like that. Like that's what that job takes.
That's
yes,
right.
It does.
Backbone.
Yes, it does.
Whether you agreed with that decision or not, he made the decision and he solved the problem.
And it was legal.
And it was legal.
They signed off that they will be let go if you walk.
And the weakness that we're experiencing now from the executive branch is like try to cotton to that and cater to this and make these people happy, make the pro-Hamas people happy in Michigan while at the same time sort of acting like you're abstaining from votes. And the whole thing is just you've got to pick a horse and ride it.
I think I saw in the news, to your point about COVID, when the teachers basically, forced using, their contract language and frankly their monopoly over school districts. I think I saw where a parent group got together and they're suing the NEA and the Chicago public school system because those parents lost a couple of years. I mean, it's a generational loss for those children. Yeah. And they're like, you forced my kids not to go to school.
It is, I get it. It's sort of old news, but it has never really been thrown on the table how atrocious and how, I want to use the word evil, these COVID policies were. When you look back, how wrong these politicians were.
Right.
And you look at like the teachers unions and how do you not question what the motive of that was? And, it's like they were so wrong. They destroyed businesses. They destroyed kids' educations. They destroyed so people like Fauci could get rich. Right. So the unions would, so the executive branch would favor the unions. And look,
I totally, and my son and I were talking about this. I visited my son's, that's where I've been traveling, racing and visiting family. But I talked to my sons about student debt forgiveness, so-called debt forgiveness. We talked about the PPP program. My son pointed out, I had not quantified this, that the PPP program, which was thrust upon the country as a way to mollify us, like it turned Americans otherwise would have been outraged to be out of work and to be told that they, that they're going to have to take an economic hit. So to assuage Americans and to mollify them and really cow us as a society and condition us to expect the government, is going to babysit us. Matthew told me that the largest transfer of wealth from the government to people, welfare, if you will, was the PPP program.
Well,
sure.
It was the largest.
It benefited the most wealthy people out there.
And it's,
companies, like I know, look, big and small.
100%.
I have talked to businesses. 100%. So I've talked to small businesses, that friends of mine who run small, not in law, but small businesses in other areas. And they had a huge windfall because of the PPP, and it was completely, totally lawful. Yeah. I talked to big corporations. Like, look at some of the big corporations that took PPP money. I mean, it was millions.
Yeah.
And all that was completely unnecessary.
Exactly.
And look, people were bragging to me, "Hey, you got your PPP money though." Right. I was like, "Yeah, but I I had to make payroll or lose all my employees.
Exactly.
So mine went out the door to the employees.
Right.
To do labor that didn't really exist because
Yeah.
Right.
everything was shut down.
And Steve,
so I had to, I did my best.
So
And if I didn't do that, I would lose my employees.
So
They'd go elsewhere.
the context now of this.
Of course, I lost them anyway.
But now we're caught up in this context, having been through COVID and this PPP debacle, and now we're talking about in comparison, a pittance of money to pay off these student loans, right? But they've got the American people have it in their head, like even 9/11 victims that were in the World Trade Center, their families got compensated for what was a terrorist attack, which is unprecedented in American history.
Right. We talked about this on a show.
Yeah,
months ago.
and then we've got FEMA and people get taken care of.
Well, look,
we have all these babysit, and then so people would have been in the streets. People would have been telling Donald Trump and Joe Biden in the streets in 2020, 2021, 2022, they would have been rebelling against these COVID policies. This transfer of wealth bought us off. It turned us all into welfare queens. The whole country got, and a lot of people, like you say, Steve, they had those loans forgiven. Like they were.
Everybody did.
I think everybody did. I was thinking about that too.
Not only that,
the large, like the NBA and
all
these
forgiven.
large entertainers. I don't think did anybody pay any back.
No.
I don't think they did.
Very few. And not only
crazy.
that, not only that, they forgave the tax.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right.
It's
so,
all crazy.
Like when they first forgave the loans, that's a taxable gain. So guess what, you student loan advocates? I want my loan. Like that was supposed to be. If the government gives me a loan, or say you give me a loan, Norm,
like an FHA-backed mortgage,
yes, and then you forgive it, that's an accretion to wealth. We should talk to Glenn about this, but that's taxable income to me because I now have received money.
Yeah,
and what the government did next is they forgave the tax. So it's like it's like they grossed up the gift, so you didn't even have to pay tax on it.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, because I know I've mentioned on the show too. I mean, I was awarded. I got through 2 of the PPP things, but I went into it thinking I'm going to pay this back. I did not sign on the bottom line lightly.
Yeah,
because I looked at it both times, going, okay, I'm going to pay this back.
And
otherwise, don't take it.
And a lot of similarly situated people did not.
I know. They said, let's do it. Let's worry about tomorrow.
No, I'm saying a lot of similarly situated people, because you took it to be a real loan.
Yeah.
A lot of people did not apply because they're like, well, I don't want a loan. I don't want to go deeper into debt.
Right. Exactly.
I'll shut down my restaurant and go out of business because I don't want to go into debt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they didn't get anything,
and they got nothing.
Other people got,
and it was forgiven. So it's a nice little segue into the student loan thing too. It's
That's
like
right.
So when we're talking about forgiving all these loans,
the rest of us are paying, and our generational.
And I heard some. You're right. I
God.
heard some. It was some Democrat. I think it was a senator. I can't remember who it was. But he's like, this doesn't cost the American public anything. It's like horseshit.
Oh my God!
It costs us billions. I mean, it's like when you forgive debt. So somebody owes you. So if you loan your buddy $2,000 because he just fell short 1 month, and you're doing the right thing.
Right.
But it's a loan. You say, look, man, I need this money back. And then later on, you say, you know what? Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like that cost you $2,000.
That's right.
And what lesson does he learn as well?
That's right. So what? Yeah, exactly.
So you're teaching a totally different story.
Complete irresponsibility for personal decisions.
All these students, irresponsibility is like, next time they'll want more, and they'll want more, and they'll want more. Well, hey, come on, they wiped my loan out. Look, I'm buying a new car. Come on, bank, will you wipe out my loan?
How many people, I'm glad you brought up cars, because I was just going to say, it's like, how many people have made a dumb decision at the car lot? Almost everybody at some point.
Sure. We all have.
Where you drive home and it's a used car and you're like, holy crap.
Right.
What did I just do?
The
I just signed
heater's
up for $500 a month and
right.
this thing's not that good. And you look at the value of when you get home and you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
This thing's upside down already.
Yeah.
Well, guess what you do? You suck it up and pay it back because
That's
you
right.
learn that lesson.
Right.
And then the next time you go to the car dealership, you don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I'm not getting sucked in this time. I'm not going to that back office to talk to that manager this time.
Or you don't go to that dealership
again. Or you don't
again.
go to that dealership again.
Right.
This is why adults.
I'm going to educate myself.
This is why, under our system of law, for most purposes, only adults can enter into contracts, not children.
That's right.
So you're an adult. Like, take responsibility for your student loan or your home loan or whatever it is.
And if these loans, I've said that this is what is more flabbergasting to me. If these loans are so bad, and these kids all got duped,
right,
and they shouldn't have signed up for them, then why in the F is our federal government still in the business of loaning out money for student loans?
Well, it's like three fingers pointing back at you. It's like, you're doing bad. It's like, wait a minute. I'm the company loaning it to you.
Well, I mean,
and I'm still doing it.
That's
I changed nothing.
It's a good point.
This has become a thing now.
And until they stop, the college prices are going to keep increasing.
Well, everybody views Uncle Sam as the like the first bank that they go to.
It's like, Dad, can I have $20? I'm going out.
So in 2008 with the subprime crisis, we bailed out all these banks,
and we
right?
shouldn't have. We absolutely shouldn't have.
And we bailed out all these borrowers,
right?
And we're bailing out at the bottom of the Fortune 500 is Intel. Just last week, under this stupid budget, $1.3 trillion that
hopefully it won't pass. Though.
Yeah,
it's not getting by the House.
It passed by the House, but
no, the Senate budget.
Now it's got to be passed by the Senate. But I'm just saying, the House passed this $1.3 trillion nightmare with all of these bells and whistles and graft.
We're talking about two separate things.
And like Intel is getting $16 billion from the taxpayers. Right. Everybody gets bailed out, and now we're conditioned to think that. So this cargo ship hits that bridge, right?
Yep.
Biden says the same day, the next day because it happened middle of the night, but he said in the morning that the federal government is going to finance and build that bridge.
All right. Well, that's a little different, though.
Well, hang on. Even his Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, said, you can pay for that up front, but we should be going after Lloyd's of London or whoever insures.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
And we should be going after the cargo ship company. Why is it your knee-jerk reaction is to say the taxpayer's burden is to rebuild this bridge?
Because the U.S. kid
political.
fell down, has a bloody knee.
That's right.
I need a Band-Aid
it's a political move.
Yes,
now, look, it's a little bit different and here's where even the staunchest libertarians will start to. Maybe not the staunchest. Here's where will start to have some sympathy or some agreement with the government spending dollars. Look, our federal government's job is to do things like take care of infrastructure on interstates. That's
of course.
That's partly that is a legitimate federal government job.
We're talking about who ultimately should pay.
Right. Now,
yes.
So look, the federal government stepping in and getting this done quicker is one thing, but to the extent they're going to forgive the container ship, for
God's sakes,
who apparently had another crash a couple of years back. I don't know. But it's like, look, if the fault is that ship is insured. So this is sort of tantamount to me getting in a car accident on the way home.
It's simple
shutting
admiralty.
down I-71 for 2 hours and the government saying, don't worry, we're going to cover that.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I can see the government, this happens in law all the time. So right back to law.
Right.
Happened right out in my parking lot.
Sure.
Some semi illegally parked in my parking lot without his trailer, backed into the utility pole. The lines go down onto the road.
Right.
And now we have to call out the basket trucks, and the fire department was there, the police were there, the private cable guy was there for Spectrum, and then the power company was there.
They all bore that cost.
They all bore that cost
instead of the guy who caused the accident.
Except it'll now go to court. And the guy who caused the accident will have to make restitution. He will have to pay back those entities, including the government, for the loss. Now, if our federal government, like Yellen is saying, if our federal government is going to step in and get this done in the quick, then that makes some sense to me.
It makes total sense.
Now, but if they're going to do that and forgive Lloyd's of London or whatever insurance company funded this thing.
That's madness.
That's madness.
That's madness.
That's madness.
Right. And I studied admiralty law. If I was going to do any kind of law coming out of law school, I wanted to do that, but I didn't want to be a lawyer. But admiralty law is very simple. It's comparative negligence, and they are 100% at fault. I mean, the container ships you compare.
Right.
I mean, the people of Baltimore did nothing
There
cause this.
There is, and I don't know what I didn't read deep. I probably should have, but I didn't dig deep into what actually happened. Why? I mean, if they lost control of it or they lost their steering.
Looked like from the video I saw, the ship lost power a couple of times.
Yeah.
Probably messed with the navigation, I'm assuming, and it just
and it happened.
House of cards.
They had enough advance notice at least to get the cars off the bridge, and I know 6, maybe even more people died, which is insanely tragic.
Yeah.
So those people have wrongful death claims against that container ship.
Right.
And pay up.
Right.
Pay up.
That's why you pay the insurance.
Because if you don't make them pay up, then what's going to prevent them from taking measures to prevent it the next time?
Exactly.
What's going to incentivize that? So this is why when people talk about tort reform and lawyers and these horrible trial lawyers, it's like, well, wait a minute. Because of the horrible trial lawyers, we have the safest cars we've ever had on the road, and it's like, it's not because the government enforced this crap. It's because trial lawyers step in and say, no, you're not allowed, car manufacturer, to do that kind of math and just have faulty seatbelts or exploding gas tanks or whatever it is. We're going to sue your ass.
Yeah,
And if you do it next time, you'll learn.
Yeah, because if you don't hold the freight container company to task, they're going to keep doing like you said.
Or they won't fix it.
Or they won't fix it.
Yeah.
Okay, if that's what they want to do, then no insurance company will insure them.
That's right. So they're out of business.
So let the insurance companies basically say, we're not insuring you unless you do this.
Right. It's amazing what the market
let the market do it. Right.
In my own little business, so people probably know from our show here that I sell racing parts. So I will have guys at least once a week, once every 2 weeks, send me an email wanting me to sell them a kit to put a fiberglass bumper on their car in place of the DOT crash-tested, mandated bumper. And I always tell them no, that my fiberglass bumpers are for race cars or show cars only. They are not for street use.
Wow.
And they want me to coach them through the process of converting their street car. And I said,
wow.
Well, it would be one thing if it's just you in the car and you're making this bonehead move to reduce the crashworthiness of your car. But you may have children in there, your wife, other people, when you sell the car, won't even know that you did this modification.
Yeah.
So it's exactly what you say, Steve. If you're going to accept liability, then be prepared to pay for it. And I am not prepared to pay for people putting race car parts on street cars, in violating the integrity of the car.
And a wrongful. So these product liability cases.
Yeah.
So in a situation like that, the person injured can sue all the way up the chain.
All the way, and they're not getting me. I'll tell you
they
that.
sue the person. Well, they'll sue you.
Well, I won't sell the parts to people doing that.
So if you might have a defense, but they'll name everybody up the chain. So if I buy the auto part from Norm, and then the manufacturer of the auto part manufactured a defective part, and they bought it from somebody else, going all the way up the line to the designer, you sue all the way up the chain.
Right.
Now, and until you find the deepest pocket who's going to pay it, and then the defense, all the defendants have to get together and say who's responsible for how much.
That's right.
And those kind of meetings happen all day long, every day in legal world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if I can, I would like to address. We had on the show some discussion about TikTok, and I was just going to let that kind of go because I said what I needed to say during our show, but then God bless our readers. I hope that more readers make more comments on our Facebook page. That's great. It's great when they don't agree with us. That's fine, and it's totally we're open to that. But since somebody went off on the TikTok discussion, I wanted to come back with some facts. So 5 out of the 15 Ohio Congress people were said on our show to have had TikTok accounts, and that possibly was evidence of some sort of hypocrisy. And I just wanted to address this. I view it completely differently. I think, first of all Congress people ought to have explored TikTok, whether they get an account or whether they sit down next to their staffer who has an account. Because if you're going to vote on divestment and force the Chinese government out of the control position at TikTok, because they control the holding company ByteDance, It's a CCP Army controlled company that owns TikTok. So at any rate, if you're going to vote on that matter, you should have an account. You should know what TikTok is. You should understand it. So I don't have a problem, and I don't see it as hypocrisy for somebody to have an account. Number two, for example, our show here, we're on Facebook. Facebook censors content. Okay, they even censor political content. They censored COVID content. They censored, adverse effects of the vaccine content. They censor all kinds of stuff. So we're on Facebook. If the argument is somehow that you're not going to be on a platform that is censored or that does censorship, then we are just as hypocritical under that thesis. And I disagree that we're being hypocrites. I think that you should exploit any situation you can, regardless of who owns it, the Chinese government or whoever, to send out counter-programming, to send out good messages. And certainly the three of us think our messages are good, even if we disagree amongst ourselves. And finally, there really is. So I talked to our producer, Dan, a little bit, and I talked to an IT expert that Steve and I use in our businesses. And I talked to some other people, Brett, who's an expert on websites and podcasts. And there is no database to accurately tell who has a TikTok account. Most people use aliases. I could pick an alias of one of those congressmen. So we found 5 names out of the 15. We don't know for sure if those are real accounts or not. And they may be. And so I'm just saying.
Yeah.
The other thing is every member of the Ohio delegation voted for that bill except one. Out of the 15, 14 voted for that bill, including all the Democrat members. This was a bipartisan piece of legislation. 197 Republicans voted for it, and 150 plus Democrats voted for it. So it was almost 50-50, both sides. This was something they agreed on. The only nay vote in Ohio was by a Republican congressman, and I don't know, his thesis. One of the congressmen that was found to have allegedly a TikTok account was, in fact, a Democrat. So I view this as bipartisan. I just wanted to put that out there that I think it's okay. Castro famously said, the capitalists will sell us the bullets we'll shoot them with. And I view us being on Facebook, we decided not to be on TikTok, our show. But if we were on TikTok, I would view it as, hey, I'm using this communist paid for and controlled platform to preach anti-communism, right? So that's all I need to say.
Well, and I can clarify a little bit, too. That was my post, and I did some research. I researched all 15 members that voted and tried to do the best I could going on TikTok and seeing if they had an account or not. And I agree. It's very difficult on any social media platform to really know if it's really that person or not. But that was, the hours worth of unprofessional journalism research that I did. I posted it as just being ironic versus hypocrisy, honestly. But, it just, and I think I was wrong in one of what you noted, which is perfectly fine. Hey, if I did something wrong and it's incorrect, Brett, I'll correct it.
If I can jump in, I don't think anything you did, I'm not challenging that. The comment on our Facebook page was so what the reader said is the GOP is a party of do what I say, not as I do. And that really rankled me because, she or the reader was obviously trying to make that, hypocrisy argument. And that's where
I was going to say the way I posted it could easily been, they're a bunch of hypocrites. And I guess I probably should have classified it as more irony than anything else. At the moment in time we were talking about
all these things we're talking about are true. So the question is, why not take advantage of a service or a system or a social media platform that can further your own needs, and at the same time you can say, well, I think this is bad and we should get rid of the Chinese ownership of it. I mean, is that Hippocratic? I guess on one level you could call it that. On the other level, it just is what it is. We all do it day in and day out.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, we took the PPP loan at the same time. I disagreed with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And by the way, everybody was
Yeah.
saying, no, these guys who say they don't want government intervention, well, now they're taking the PPP loan and begging for it. And my response was always, that's because the effing government created this stupidity.
Well, they put us in a hypocritical position.
They took
Yes,
took my business from me, and then
they shut you down, and then people felt justified to take the relief.
And usually the people, I've shifted this over to PPP again because it pisses me off so much. But and then usually the people that were playing that harp were usually the ones getting paid.
Yeah,
because
justifying the morality of it or whatever.
Right.
Exactly.
So I would go over to court, and all these people that are working for the government were like, all champions for it. And I said, well, when's the last time you got your paycheck? And they're like, well, last week. And I said, yeah, it's been 2 years for me. Thanks.
Yeah.
Or a year and a half.
Exactly.
So, shove that up your ass.
I was kind of on the other side. Yeah, I know we're going back to PPP, but I was kind of on the other side. I didn't tell people I got it. I was kind of like, I got it to help.
But I would take up these arguments.
Yeah, right. And I would say I did. I wasn't proud of it necessarily.
Well, no, it militates.
It's like it helped, but it's like I'm not proud of taking this thing.
It militates against your inner desire is to be self-sufficient,
right?
And that's what our country's based on: is that you go out, you do the best you can, marketplace economy, you bust ass, and then you get rewarded.
But you probably felt it too. Once you took it, it has that little bit of a drug feel.
It does. Like, wow, that's a lot of money. How did I get that?
Right.
It's like,
and I'm not
going
to have to. And then I don't have to pay it back.
Right.
There was a little bit there.
It's easy. It's the opium.
Something in my body kind of went,
it's
wow,
the opium.
this feels good. It's like, wait a minute, this is not right.
And here's the danger.
Because your kids are going to have to pay for this.
And here's the danger of this kind of stuff. And, and back to our message that we started with is that we all fall into this imperfection. We all do. This is human nature.
Yes.
And some of the stuff the left tries to do is they want to re-legislate human nature and think it's going to work. It's not.
Exactly.
It won't work.
Right.
You can't legislate human nature.
I mentioned conditioning. They are conditioning us to be at the nipple and to feed off the breast of Uncle Sam.
Like the PPP or like TikTok or like all these things. And I see it day in and day out in my criminal practice. If everybody's doing it, then you start to think it's okay if I do it too.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You start to feel like I'm going to do it too. And there's the old saying that misery loves company.
Right.
If everybody lets their dog crap on the same patch and nobody cleans it up, then you're not going to clean it up, right?
Yeah, we all got those stupid checks from the IRS. Remember that? They were like $1,200.
Yeah.
I mean,
during the Bush administration, wasn't it?
No, under Trump.
No, that was under Trump.
Was that under Trump?
I'm talking about the COVID.
Remember,
thing.
he's going to go big. He's going to go big, and then $1,200 shows up in your bank account. I'm like, what is this?
And then
so I was thinking Bush had the same thing, like a tax relief thing.
No, I'm talking about
sorry, I went back too far. I went back too far.
Relief.
Yeah. Okay.
It conditioned us to oh gosh, I got $1,200 for free.
I forgot about that.
Well, and most people just put in their banks and used it for food or whatever. Nobody needed that.
Again, with my son Matthew, you've got a son named Matthew, so this gets confusing. But and they're both brilliant. Your Matt and my Matt. I mean, they're smart. Both of them are smarter than me. Let me just say that. But Matt said, "Dad, right now, it takes 2 workers to support every one person on some kind of federal relief." And he said, we're going down the path with these trillions in debt that we're heading to. It'll be a 1-to-1 relationship. One worker will have to completely support one person.
And this is what we talked about with welfare.
Oh, my God.
Or with Social Security last week.
Then we're done.
It's like we're employing fewer people. And the people you are employing are illegal aliens, so they don't pay any tax anyway. And they're not paying Social Security taxes. So we're employing fewer people that
Worse
are paying
than that,
into
they're
the system,
getting benefits.
and they're getting benefits. And so fewer people are employed, fewer people are paying, and more people are retiring. It's like the math here doesn't work, folks.
No.
This is so when people get all offended, and I blame the Republicans as much as anybody on this because they're not standing up there. Like a few of them are, but
100%.
most of them, like Trump's not standing up there saying get rid of this because he's worried about not getting elected. No. Somebody is going to have to bear this cross sooner or later. Somebody's going to have to say, "Look, folks, I'm gonna just say the quiet part out loud here. We're going bankrupt.
We're going bankrupt,
right? So we have fewer people working and paying in, more people that need it." It's like, there's more money going out than we got money coming in.
Yeah.
The dollar's on the chopping blocks already in the international world. And guess what? Something's got to give.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and kind of to your point, there's a push to put on the ballot in Ohio to increase minimum wage.
Right. It's complete
And
lunacy.
And California just did $20 an hour.
So the quote from Mariah Ross, executive director of One Fair Wage, this is who's pushing to get the ballot initiative. 1.4 million Ohioans will get an instant raise.
Right.
It's like, could we look at
And
it
then-
differently?
and
Could
then
we
in
look at
one
it
year,
this
they're
simply?
gonna lose their job.
Well, they might
Right.
get an instant walking papers is what they're going to get.
That's what I say. Within 1 year, they'll lose
Could
their
we
job.
look at this a different way? It's like, how about we create jobs versus create higher minimum wage?
Yeah.
Let's create jobs
So what you're
that
doing,
helps alleviate these millions of
impeding
people that are
jobs.
right.
yeah,
Right.
it's
So-
such insanity.
Ex-
It's such insanity.
Right. So what we think Intel is the salve here. It's not.
It's not.
You have to have pretty much, from what I understand, at least a college education to walk in that door
Well, this is
of some level.
yeah,
It's not.
and they're not necessarily recruiting within Ohio either. So, but
Oh, no.
look,
They'll be H-1B visa people.
Yeah,
So
there'll
look-
be a lot. Yeah.
I mean, this is like the old debate. You had John Locke and Thomas Hobbes sort of debating human nature, and Hobbes would say, because humans are these horrible people that want to just cut everybody's throat out to get what they want, and they'll take what they need, and they're going to go survive, they're going to do all these things, and we need an absolute dictator to keep us in line and manage it, so we should give up control to the Leviathan, the big government, to keep us in check and have the authoritarian regime. And Locke would say, yes, I agree with all that. That's why we don't need the big guy. Like he reached the exact opposite conclusion, because his point was, we will find a way to get along and work because we all have to eat, we all have to do these things. So our human nature is such that this stuff will correct itself. If somebody is worth more in the workplace, they're going to get paid more.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to go hire an entry-level person at minimum wage when I don't get my value back. So what I'm going to do is force higher-level people to do that job, or I'll do that job myself instead of helping some young law clerk in law school. And I'll go hire a lawyer and say, well, screw that. If I got to pay that much, I'll just hire a lawyer.
Yeah.
And then the law student doesn't get experience. And then the law student goes out into the workforce without any experience whatsoever, and that ultimately creates bigger problems. And if you want to distill it down to like minorities and those in need and, you know, the underprivileged, it's like they're the ones really getting hurt, because who's going to hire somebody
At $20 an hour.
At $20 an hour who's got zero experience doing anything? You know, if my first job, it was minimum, maybe even less than minimum wage, because it was baling hay. And you just got a handful of dollar bills at the end of the day working for the farmer.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, yeah, but guess what? I learned how to go work, and I got some money, and it got me my gas tank.
You
or
got
whatever it
the
is,
farmer's
and
tan of the day.
I got the tan of the day, and I felt like a man for that short period of time.
Yeah.
And then I could say, when I got my next job, I used to bale hay. And then when I got my next job, it was like $3.35 or cheap. It was less. And, you know,
I got to manage the guys baling the hay the next season. And then maybe the next season after that, like I worked during the winter planning.
Right. So
the
you
bailing.
never get in the door. And that hurts.
You move up.
That hurts the underprivileged who you want to rise up in the ranks of our capitalistic society. You know, it's like we have a society, our system, when left to its own devices and taken out of control of the government, it will elevate you out of the poverty level faster than any other way imaginable.
Absolutely.
Any other, because I was at everybody here, we were all at the poverty level at one point. And this is the other thing. It's
100%.
Like, when they cite you these stats,
right,
they're just saying, well, we have all these people below the poverty line. I was like, yeah, but it changes regularly.
That's right.
So like my first job, I was making crap money. I was well below the poverty line.
Sure.
But I quickly elevated out of that because my first job got me my second.
Right.
Well,
my
and
third.
my daughter the same way. She was in poverty just yesterday, and she accepted a job today.
Right, there you go. So immediately,
Literally, she came out of poverty.
Yep,
she has
just
a
like
work
that.
ethic.
Just
Your daughter has a work ethic.
because she got work experience climbing the ladder.
Right.
You know, the lowest rung of the ladder is easy, but it's the only way to get to the second one.
Yeah.
At my favorite little gastropub, you know, where I have a drink and a sandwich, when I first went in there 3 years ago or whatever it's been, the young lady waiting on me is now the assistant general manager. After 3 years, she proved her competence to the owners and moved up the chain. And that's the
restaurant business, perfect example.
That's the American story, and she didn't start it. So when Gavin is
imagine if her first job priced her out.
Exactly, she never would have had that chance.
Because a minimum wage job is not a career path.
at all.
And again, I saying that, I know somebody's going to say, yeah, but wait a minute, there are people that just really will never get more than minimum wage because of difficulties in life.
The tiniest
I
percentage.
totally understand that.
That's right.
I totally understand that. And there are ways to help them.
Yes.
Of course.
There are.
Right.
But if you walk into a minimum wage job and knowing this is not a career, this is a stopgap to the next thing. Now, it could be going to management at a McDonald's. Fan-damn-tastic.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's great.
And
That's
do you
right.
put on your CV, your professional resume now, your first job? Of course not.
No.
But I put it on my second job.
Right.
I put my first job on my second
Right.
job, and
Right.
my third.
Yeah.
You know, when I applied for my first job, my resume included things
And
like
it's-
construction.
You know, and it's not even really the job. It's what you got out of the job is what you talk about.
Right.
It's
You've done something.
It's those skills,
That's right.
soft skills that you learned
Yeah.
by working in a crap minimum wage job at a restaurant.
You cut your hair, you shave, you wear clean clothes, you learn how the world works.
And if you put it down on a resume, then when I'm looking at people, what I read is this person's confident about what they did at that job enough that they put it down there. So if I pick up the phone, I can call somebody and say,
You
hey,
at
look,
that one
I'm
too.
calling about Bob.
Right.
Bob's here applying for a job. Can you tell me anything good? And, you know, when I have people call me like that, it's either, yeah, I can confirm they worked here.
Yeah. And that's
Or
all.
I can say, you know what?
Is he a good
that
dude?
dude worked his butt off.
Right.
He was here before everybody else, and he left after everybody else. And when I didn't even have to tell him to get stuff done, he learned quicker than anybody I've ever. It's like you've got somebody out there. You're creating references.
Right.
So the next time you get to make the big leap. And
I'm going to give a concrete example about somebody who's on the Ohio Supreme Court right now. I went to high school with Pat Fisher. Now, Pat and I were never big friends, right? Because we had intellectual duels, and I was a little mean maybe, and he had a mean streak too, and we would get a little vicious. Pat came from a family that was, I believe, pretty impoverished, very blue collar. He would come across from Kentucky to Ohio to attend our Jesuit high school. And part of the deal was for them to lower the cost of his tuition. This is all public information. Pat, this was in his campaign literature, so I'm not violating any kind of confidence here. Pat, after class, now this is a straight A student who went on to go to Harvard or Yale, one of the two, for law school, and now sits on the Supreme Court. Pat was the janitor at our high school. He was a student janitor. So while we're all studying or playing football or doing all the, right? He is in the hallway with a mop. He's now on the Ohio Supreme Court.
well,
A perfect example.
Perfect example.
Starting at the bottom, it's Horatio Alger, right? You can advance in our society. Ben Carson, his mom worked 2 or 3 jobs.
most
right?
people don't get to leapfrog.
And that,
You have to take the steps up.
You have to take the
And,
steps up.
You know, my first job working for a phenomenal lawyer named William Meeks, and owned this building before I did.
Yeah.
I showed up, and I got he always used to say you should pay me to work here. But there was something,
And he was right.
and he was probably right.
Yeah.
But you know what my first job was? Like picking up lunch,
Yeah. Right.
and
Yeah.
it hurt a little. I got a little butthurt from that.
Right.
Yeah, I'm picking up, but I'm better. I can.
Because you're in law school. You're like,
then I had to go to the copy shop
yeah.
to Kinko's up on Spring and Gay, and then or wherever that was, and I had to, I had to do all these things. But you know what I did? I learned how to get stuff done.
That's right.
I learned how to get stuff done. I was a personal assistant, but I learned how to get stuff done. I learned who to call at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. I learned how to figure out how to file something. I learned where the Ohio Supreme Court was because I had to run there.
Yeah.
I had to go pick up one of the lawyer's aunts to take them to another lawyer's office for a personal injury suit. And guess what I learned how to do? Find that place in the middle of downtown on the east side of Columbus.
Yeah.
Look up at now this is somewhat, and you can say that this is
Busy work.
or like anybody
It
should
builds
know.
character, Steve.
I learned how to navigate a city
Yeah.
without a GPS.
Yeah.
All right. Now,
Right.
and you could say, well, that's easy to do. It wasn't so easy when I was 19 or
No.
21 years old
No.
in a foreign city. It's like I didn't know how to look up addresses and
Yep.
find places and
Yep.
figure out where to park in a city.
Right.
I learned how to do all those things. I
Right.
became very, very resourceful because of that. And
Yep.
then the next year, when they started to trust me to do some legal writing, I got to employ all the skills I just learned to my writing. And you could say, how does that happen? Well, I got creative.
Yeah.
I learned how
Yeah.
and those are skills that sort of cross the spectrum.
And
as
that's
you
cool
go forward.
that he allowed you the room to sink or swim.
Mhm.
Honestly,
Yeah.
okay, let's see what this dude can do the first year. We'll give him all the flexibility, but he knew exactly where he was taking you.
He knew what he was doing.
If you could do it,
If I could
you
do
would
it.
do
That
it.
was a
you'd be
great-
fine.
I was
Great
trustworthy
education.
enough to go deliver that, then I was trustworthy enough for the next project.
Exactly.
It took 2 years, maybe 3, before I was trustworthy enough to take the dog's fecal sample up to the Ohio State vet clinic. That was like the senior law clerk role. Yavich was allowed to do that. I wasn't allowed to do that.
Hey, if we can, just to tie the knot on this borrowing and spending, so that $150 billion that Biden has floated out there, he and the Secretary of Education have actually started taking applications and prematurely granting forgiveness. But a consortium of states, as we know, a consortium of states took him to the Supreme Court, and they ruled against Biden, last year. Well, because he's doing it again, like in the face of that decision, he's doing the same thing again, essentially. A coalition of states led by the state of Kansas. Our own Dave Yost is not in that group of states yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if he joins them. So it's about 15 states currently that are suing to kill the new student loan forgiveness plan. So I'm just saying, here we go again. Right.
If you want to cause a riff, then forgive student loans for kids whose parents have plenty of money.
Yeah, right.
While the blue collar workers and the tradesmen and the people that didn't go to college or went to college and paid for it sit there with nothing.
Right.
It's like, can you create?
Right.
Where's
my program for my plumbing tools?
Think of the divisiveness of that.
Well, and if you think about it, okay, so it's a democratic thought going on here, and it's, well, on the outside looking in, totally white collar. It's kind of the reverse. You would think he would be going blue collar with this.
You would think, right?
Trade school loan forgiveness.
But it's the liberal
isn't
college.
That honest? Isn't that strange?
It's all about the voters, right? So it's the liberal college kids are voting for. You're buying votes.
It is an election year gambit.
You're buying votes. That's all that is.
And I think the kids are even cynical about it because the first program.
Screw it, I'll take it.
Well, he announced the first program, and then the Supreme Court said, "Hey, you don't have you can't."
And then he's going to do it anyway.
And he's going to do
it anyway.
So the students are like, "Yeah, I'm not counting on this." He's going to get slapped down again.
And again, what an example any president in that role, whether it's Biden, whoever it is, that says the court says no, you can't, and he comes right back around. It's like, yeah, I can. I'll just lower the price.
First
it's
time
like, come on.
that I've seen that. I'm sure it's happened historically, but Biden does it repeatedly.
Yes,
I don't care what the Supreme Court says. I'm doing it anyway. I don't care what they says about Dobbs. We're doing it anyway. I don't care what they said about student loans. I'm doing it anyway. I don't care what they said about the board. I'm doing it anyway.
Right.
I don't care what they said about guns. I'm doing it anyway.
And he's setting precedent because the next president will do the same thing.
Yeah. The last most outrageous example I can think of was Andrew Jackson evicting the Cherokee Nation, right? The Supreme Court. We had Cherokee congressmen in Congress back then, and they were told, quit speaking your Native American language, whatever the Cherokee people spoke. You need to publish a paper in English, and you need to speak English, and you need to dress up like Western, like wear a suit and a tie, right? So they did all that. The Cherokee Nation had an English language newspaper. They spoke English. This is when they were in Georgia, I believe, the Cherokee Nation. And Andrew Jackson was told by the U.S. Supreme Court that he could not evict the Cherokee. And he said, the Supreme Court doesn't have an army, and I do. And he evicted them.
He did it anyway.
The Trail of Tears, you've heard that phrase, refers to the death march of the Cherokee Nation to Oklahoma from Georgia in the grips of winter, right? And they go from this lush environment to this flat plain where there's no tree,
not their native environment at all. Right?
At all.
Totally different.
Right.
And he did that. He flew in the face of the Supreme Court. And this is the same thing, although it doesn't involve death, but it is absolute defiance of a Supreme Court
So if there's
decision.
a threat to democracy, to use the trope that they're throwing around, it's that.
Absolutely.
It's that. If we have a separation of powers and we're supposed to respect it, it only works if we respect it.
That's right.
It only works if you have the ground rules. Like the Monopoly game doesn't play if you don't follow the rules of the game.
That's right.
And, but you could say the biggest, strongest guy is going to follow the rule, is not going to follow the rules, is going to make them up as he goes, the game doesn't play.
That's right.
People quit.
Yeah.
Or at least be smarter
That's
about
the end.
Be smarter about it. I mean, they wanted Capone on everything, but they got him on taxes. I mean, okay, so if Biden really wants this through, is there a legal way to do it? Maybe there is, rather than just being a dumbass bully and saying, "Oh, screw you, I'm going to do it."
Brett, you said something.
Good grief.
You said something so brilliant a while ago that I want to use that in this case. Like, what message, what mindset is learned by these decisions by government?
Yeah.
And so when you treat the Cherokee like subhumans, right? Yeah. You get wounded knee. Mm-hmm. You get wounded knee. You get people. You know, they casually will execute subhumans, right? Mm-hmm. Because
well, and look, there's a backlash, and it's coming.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's coming. Look, Biden had the workers. Right or wrong, agree or not agree. I mean, he did. I mean, he did because the unions were behind him. Like, he had the workers.
Right.
And now he's pissing all over him with the electric car thing. Right. So
and Trump says it'll be a bloodbath in Detroit. He didn't mean
That's
he
so
meant
stupid.
he meant a bloodbath.
Does anybody really believe that he meant he was going to have a right? Does anybody actually think that?
It's unbelievable.
It's like, let's go, Brandon.
He's talking
Does
about
anybody actually think that that's what they were saying?
He's talking about the industry going bankrupt and workers losing their jobs.
Right. This is
economic.
But if you play that little soundbite over and over and over and over again, it starts to sound like it. Yes, but
it's like,
put the beginning of it, the end of it. No.
If you listen to that speech, it's so obvious. It's sort of, it's like everything else they take out of context. I mean, it's so insane.
Because I had to listen to that sound, and I heard the soundbite 2 or 3 times going, and it hit me hard too. I'm going, whoa! But you've got to put it in the context of what was said it before and after, and the flow of it. Right. No, probably not. He again, got to take the guy with a grain of salt. He's not the greatest wordsmith.
No, he's not. But we have used the term bloodbath around here. Probably, that's a bloodbath.
Well, it's like the statues of the Confederates. And he said, there
were good people on both sides. Nobody really thought he meant that the white supremacist KKKers were good people.
No,
I didn't think that.
He's talking about people.
Well, he said it.
He's talking about people like Shelby Steele, who people who are scholars about the Civil War, how they have certain opinions about certain statues.
There are viable arguments about the statutes on each side. Right. That's what. Now,
that's all he said.
And you said, Brett, he's not a wordsmith.
No, he's not.
And now worse than that. Here's what's worse. Here's what's more hypocritical. If we're going to talk about hypocritics, is that a word? If we're going to talk about hypocrisy,
hypocrites.
The things that Biden says, his gaffes that the media will forgive, are like over the top.
Right.
Like if you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
Right.
Like, can you
Republicans want to put you back in chains?
I mean, it's
when
like,
it was the Democrats that had them in chains.
It's like it's so like his gaffes get a pass, but like these clear things that Trump says, and look, like Trump, hate Trump, whatever, but at least report it fairly. Call it like you see it. Call the balls, call the strikes.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Right.
And as I said during Trump's campaign, like you're all they're doing is creating power. They're empowering him. If you don't like him, you're really empowering him because in the funny part is, he says enough stuff without having to do that you could jump all over.
That's right.
Right? Like his stance right now on a couple of things isn't the greatest. I mean, there's stuff you could pick on.
Right.
But no, they always take the bridge too far.
They don't want to talk about the issues.
They take the bridge too far.
So we had some commentary amongst us, and it stimulated me to do a deeper dive into the right to keep and bear arms, because we're really talking about federal force to make people do things. And at the end of the day, if you don't pay your taxes, somebody with a gun will escort you to court, and you will go to prison.
That's right.
So, the government does use violence and force to make us do things. So I decided to research. I went back to 1788, Federalist Paper 29, Alexander Hamilton writing. Hamilton, the big, Broadway show. The Bill of Rights were adopted 3 years later in 1791. And this is what he said. If you'll bear with me, it's 1 or 2 sentences. If circumstances should at any time that the federal government needs to form an army of any magnitude, that army can never be formidable to the liberties of the people. While there is a large body of citizens, little if not at all inferior to them in discipline and the use of arms. Those citizens standing ready to defend their own rights and those of their fellow citizens. This appears to me to be the only substitute that can be devised for a standing army to exist. The best possible security against it, the standing army, if it should exist, is the people having arms.
Sure. Yep.
And he said, little, if at all, inferior, which means that the arms that the citizens have the right to bear are, in fact, back then, military arms. So when people talk about today that those are guns of war, that's what the hell Alexander Hamilton was talking about.
I mean, look, the saying would be the battle rifle of the day. So
that's
like,
right.
If they got a musket, we got a musket.
Right.
If they got a semi-auto
right.
AR-15 style rifle or an M16 or whatever it is, then we should be able to have one. So by they I mean the army versus the citizens. So I mean, look, and then Brett and I were talking about this the other day. It's not like you can actually defend yourself against a governmental assault with small arms anyway. It's going to come in the forms of drones and tanks and airplanes. But the point still is there. The history, text, and tradition is still there, and there's a reason beyond hunting and sportsmanship that we have a Second Amendment right to bear arms.
And we were talking about people versus citizens. And Alexander Hamilton is talking about citizens.
Right. So
there's a little.
The question
context.
is, how do you define? We were talking about the immigrant case out of I think it was it New York? I can't remember.
I think it was. New York.
It might have been Illinois, where the judge said no, it violates the Second Amendment to apply a law that says illegal immigrants can't own or possess firearms.
Yeah.
So look,
and I think you may have made a comment about a comment that I made to if you need a gun, and again, I've never come out against the Second Amendment. If you want to have a gun, that is, fine. You semi-automatic.
It was a discussion we were having about
in regards to in my mindset, going, yeah, you can if it makes you feel secure, but if the government decides, and again, we'll go back to your point, if the government decides to put a all-out war against the U.S. citizenry,
good luck.
It's good luck.
Yeah,
I mean,
good luck.
you might as well put a target on your home. But do you want to live in that country that happens? If we get that far, my God, it's civil war is going to
your neighbor for food.
Civil war is going to be like a playground.
And Hamilton was talking about the posse comitatus and how the government could not turn its standing army against its citizens. Yeah. But the only way to make sure that wouldn't happen is that the citizens have the right to keep and bear arms themselves.
Yeah. Right.
It's the counterbalance.
It's the counter. But what Brett and I are saying, look, the balance is way out of whack because what the federal government has the power to do, well beyond anything that Hamilton could conceive at the time, is so far over the top that your AR-15, good luck.
Because you got Jane and John joystick in Vegas that can drop drone bombs on anybody.
And at the time of him writing this, the U.S., we had won our independence. The U.S. did not have a standing army.
Right, correct.
So this was part of the debate about if we have a standing army, then how do we keep it from being tyrannical?
Right, which is it makes another point, which is the argument that I hear all the time about the Second Amendment, which is for the purpose of a well-orderly militia.
Yes.
What Hamilton is saying sort of belies that argument. He's saying, look, no, you don't understand. It's not just so we have a militia. It's in case the government has an army and we don't, and the people can't defend themselves against the army. Fine. I mean, look, whatever the historic purpose of it, it still apply, or whatever the current application of the historic purpose, it still applies. We still have a right to bear arms, right?
The Supreme Court said it is an individual right.
It's an individual right, and we have it.
Yes.
So, and look, it also doesn't say that everybody has to have a gun.
No.
Fair enough.
Right.
And like you said, Brett, you choose not to have an AR-15, then don't get one.
That's right.
You want an AR-15, then go buy one.
My point was, in bringing this up, a lot of people think that it's a quaint part of the Bill of Rights. Like it's a throwback to an earlier day. And really, guns are about duck hunting or collecting, war memorabilia or something like that. No. The right to keep and bear arms is based on the citizens having the means to mount an insurrection or a defense against a
they
tyrant.
made it second. They made it second
after speech.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. Well, and if you start to read the books about these historic figures, whether they're well-known historic figures or not in that time period, 1700s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, those guys, their education they went through is nothing compared to what we do today. I mean, it is, the Greek philosophers, they cut that's what their school was.
It truly was a liberal arts education.
They studied all the way back to the beginning of time in order to come up with these concepts that still hold true today. It's really it gives you chills thinking about it.
Amazing how smart these guys were and bringing back what worked, what didn't from Roman times and such, because that was their school in grade school all the way through college. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I've said it on the show before. It's like you had Adams taking the long trek into the library to study like Greek warfare during the Revolutionary War and using those tactics. Like that's what was going on.
So Adams, before he was president, this always blows people away. Adams, before he was president, and again, he was against King George III at the time. This is a beautiful thing for Steve, the defense lawyer. He defended the British soldiers who were accused of the Boston Massacre. He was their attorney.
He was their lawyer. Yeah.
Which I'm sure he knew he was going to get backlash on.
Oh, he got backlash.
He knew it. He knew it.
Oh, yeah.
But they should be defended.
Yep.
That's right.
And it's
they should be.
Go read some of that stuff.
It's fantastic.
It's fabulous.
It's
I think there's a movie about it.
It's eye-opening. It's eye-opening. It's eye-opening.
Well, that incredible movie, series, Adams.
They talked about it in that
movie.
It
was fabulous with that Paul Giamatti playing
Did a
Adams.
great job. Great job.
Fabulous. Public television.
Yeah.
It's one other thing about the law. So we've talked about Abraham Lincoln having never gone to law school. You just were an apprentice to an older lawyer, and you learned it. The state of Washington is getting rid of you don't have to you don't need a law degree in the state of Washington now. They passed this law a couple of weeks ago that, again, it was DEI based. In one way, it's beautiful because it deregulates being a lawyer. But in the other way, their intention is that, you can be a lawyer 10 other ways.
If you can't pass the bar exam or you can't get through law school, you can still be a lawyer. Otherwise, it's
in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
Some degree of lawyer. Then you're saying there are certain. Is that
no,
what
you can get a license in Washington.
Wow.
The law profession is regulated a lot like doctors. You have to have you have to go to an accredited law school, and every state has a bar exam, and I think every state now is part of the multi-state bar exam. So we all take at least the multiple guesser portion of the multiple choice portion of the test. The multi-state test is the same for everybody, so it sort of standardizes it.
And the Supreme Court in Ohio is the licensure.
You get
agency.
your license, and you're subject to
like the nursing
sanction,
board,
professionalism, and everything else. So I think what they're saying is you can become a lawyer. You're probably still going to have to do something to be admitted into the bar, but you can enter. You can at least get yourself there at the knock on the door without going to law school, I guess.
Wow.
Or maybe not even taking the bar exam. And look, I'm not saying that you should have to. Like you said, Norm, on some level, that it's got some appeal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let it just sort of happen. But
I would want to see how good they are, though.
See, that'll get you arrested in Ohio.
The market would bear that out pretty quickly, I would think.
I would think.
And I wonder if the state of Washington is needing lawyers. You think that might be an incentive, too, because they need to fill the pot?
I think it's theater.
It's just theater? Okay. I wonder.
I didn't thought about that, though. I hadn't thought about that.
Because sometimes that's a knee-jerk reaction.
I wouldn't go
we
there.
need people, so let's lower the bar, quote unquote.
It's a gorgeous state, but I wouldn't go practice there because it's great. It's great. Those
and they have cities like named Walla Walla.
That's pretty cool. Yakima. All right, so we are pushing the bounds of our limits here. You got one last thing you want to throw in?
Sure. I mean, I'll just throw these out. Florida, Disney is settling with DeSantis. Florida also, you must now be over 14 to sign up for your own social media accounts. The DOJ wants Google under a general warrant, which is unconstitutional. The words general warrant you can't do. They want Google to reveal all searches about certain subject matters and give names back to the DOJ. Opening day baseball was yesterday.
Cincinnati Reds, they always play on opening day, right?
Yeah, Texans, because they won the World Series, they got the by a minute or two. CBP, the One app on the phone, we're now up to 500,000 people have flown in who otherwise are not eligible, and the union says, that's a way for the administration to hide the number because they don't come across the Rio Grande River now. They're just flying into 43 different airports. The DOJ now has a red flag center. They're going to coordinate the 50 states to take guns away from people.
This is scary stuff. I'm going to do a munitions podcast on that one.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And finally, this author named Coleman Hughes, an African-American author who put out a new book called The End of Race Politics, Arguments for a Colorblind America, appeared on The View. And Sonny Hostin there called him a charlatan and a pawn of white supremacists. And he says, hey, I just want to treat people without regard to race. He is a Democrat himself, and he stood up for himself and said that's an ad hominem.
He fought back, too. He fought back. He didn't take that stand. And he did it calmly, he did it collectively, and he did it with logic.
And finally, I would like to salute our producer, Dan Buckley. You people have the most useful tool that Dan has. Dan does this incredible job on our full broadcast. If you go to our Facebook page, Dan has indexed by the time of the program where different subject matters are being talked about.
Sweet.
And Dan is doing, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, an incredible job of posting our programs and giving you a table of contents so that if you just care about one or two things, you can go find that and don't have to watch the whole hour and 15 minutes.
All right. Well, while you're there, do a couple other things. Go to commonsenseohioshow.com, and there you can subscribe to our podcast. Or if you don't know how to subscribe to podcast, I didn't until I had to figure it out. You can just, if you're an Android guy, you go to wherever your Google. If you're an Apple guy, you go to iCat. What is it called for Apple?
Apple Podcast.
Apple Podcast. Yeah. How would I not know that? But we have links on our webpage, commonsenseohioshow.com, where you can do all that. You can like us. Please share. Please like. Please engage. And if you want to be a sponsor, do that too. If you want to be a guest, check us out. You can send a question, and you can use that same format on commonsenseohioshow.com, where we are coming at you right from the middle each and every week, at least until now.